Family, welcome back. We're reading dun, 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 The Sword of Allah, and we are on page 8. Towards the battle. On reaching maturity, Khalid's main interest became war, and this soon reached the proportions of an obsession. Khalid's thoughts were thoughts of battle, his ambitions were ambitions of victory, his urges were violent, and his entire psychological makeup was military. He would dream of fighting great battles and winning great victories. Himself always the champion, admired and cheered by all. He promised himself battle. Sounds a lot like Spartacus. He promised himself victory, and he promised himself lots and lots of blood. Known to him, destiny had much the same ideas about Khalid, son of Al-Waleed. Chapter 2. The New Faith. A certain Arab would walk the streets of Mecca at night, lost in thought. He was a member, no longer wealthy, of the noble clan of Bani Hashim. Strikingly handsome man of medium height with broad, powerful shoulders. His hair ended in curls just below his ears. His dark eyes fringed with long lashes and seemed pensive and sad. Ooh. There was much in the way of life of the Arabs that caused him pain. Everyone around him saw signs of decay, and the injustice done to the poor and helpless, in the unnecessary bloodshed, and the treatment of women who were considered as no better than domestic animals. He would be deeply anguished whenever he heard reports of the live burial of unwanted female children. Certain clans of the Arabs had made a horrible ritual of the killing of infant daughters. The fathers would let the child grow up normally until she was 5 or 6 years old. He would then tell her that he would take her for a walk and dress her up as if for a party. He would take her out of the town or settlement to the side of a grave already dug for her. He would make the child stand on the edge of the grave, and the child, quite unaware of her fate, and believing that her father had brought her out for a picnic, would look eagerly at him, wondering when the fun would start. The father would then push her into the grave, and as the child cried to her father to help her out, he would hurl large stones at her, crushing the life out of her tender body. When all the movement had ceased and bruised and broken body parts of his poor victim, he would fill the grave with earth and return home. Sometimes he would brag about what he had done. You know, what's really dark is that the killing of children, it's, done in so many cultures across the world. I mean, since 1973 to right now, America has had 61 million abortions. 61 million. Just in 2017, 800,000 children were aborted in the United States. People making money off of that when you get the abortion and on everything after that happens to that fetus parts. And there was a governor in Georgia who argued for post-birth abortion, meaning which is genocide, infanticide, right? The baby's born, and if it survives, the parent and the doctors will discuss if they want to euthanize the child. So now, if you give birth, and, well, it depends though, because people are fighting against it, but I'm not sure if it actually got put into power, but he argued for it on a radio show. And so basically, if the child's born, let's say you got an abortion at 8 months, so very late abortion, late-term abortions have been happening under the table, even though people deny it. The child's born, it survives. So now it's alive, now it has a constitutional right to exist, essentially. It's now out of the body and can survive on its own, and it's supposed to be at that point you cannot kill it, but now they're trying to push it to where no, you can. You can. And the child can be put in a little incubator or in a little waiting area while the parent and the doctor decides what will be done. Will it live or will it die? And if they decide it dies, they're going to inject it and toss it in a bucket with the other babies. Put it in a bag and get stored in the freezer. And also China had the one-child policy, which led to forced abortions. The Communist Party of China has done a sad push against Google and Facebook and all social media platforms to remove images that showed the documentations of when China did this to the women, when the soldiers, the party workers, whatever you want to call them in China. I don't know if they're technically called police officers. I'm not sure what they call them in China, but they would round those women up, take them, forced abortion, toss her out, baby parts going out. It was a very dark time. That's why China has more men than women now. So this is very tragic, but people are trying to bring that back. People deny it. So many people deny it. But whistleblowers get punished when they make the videos, and YouTube removes those videos exposing that. So that's why so many people don't understand this is a rising problem. And even, for example, women brag about their abortions, right? They wear the coat hanger shirts, which used to be back in the day, you take apart a coat hanger and and people wear necklaces too with the coat hanger. So it's a dark times. Too many people like hurting kids, man. It's ridiculous. This custom was not, of course, very widespread in Arabia among the famous families of Mecca, the Bani Hashim, the Bani Umayyah, and the Bani Maksum. There is not a single instance on record of a female child being killed. This happens only among some desert tribes and only in some clans, but even the exceptional occurrence of this revolting practice was sufficient to horrify and sicken the more intelligent and virtuous of the Arabs of the time. Then there were the idols of Mecca. The Kaaba had been built by the Prophet Abraham as the house of God, but had been defiled with the gods of wood and stone. The Arabs would propitiate these gods with sacrificial offerings, believing that they would harm a man when angered and be bountiful when pleased. In and around the Kaaba there were 360 idols, the most worshipped of whom were Hubal, Uzza, and Lat. Hubal, the pride of the Arab pantheon, was the largest of these gods and was carved of red agate. Red agate. I can't remember what that looks like. Gotta Google that later. When the inhabitants of Mecca had imported this idol from Syria, it was without a right hand. So they fashioned a new hand of gold and stuck it on its arm. Such a waste of gold. Such a waste. In the religion of the Arabs there was a curious mixture of polytheism and belief in Allah, the true God. They believed that Allah was Lord and Creator, but they also believed in the idols, regarding them as sons and daughters of Allah. This is where you cannot associate partners, and when the Quran says, He has begotten no children. This is basically that. The position of the deity in the Arab mind was like that of a divine council. God being the president of the council, which these other gods and goddesses were members. So it's pretty much like the Greek and Roman way, right? And the Egyptian way. Each having supernatural powers, though subservient to the president. The Arabs would swear by Hubal or by other gods or goddesses. They would also swear by Allah. They would name their sons Abdul Uzza, i.e. the slave of Uzza. They would also name their sons Abdullah, i.e. the slave of Allah. Abdullah means the slave of Allah? Wow. That's amazing. It would not be correct to suggest that everything was wrong with the Arab culture of the time. There was much in their way of life which was glorious and chivalrous. There were qualities in the Arab character which would be enviable today. So let's see, the Arab character was, it says, courage, hospitality, and a sense of personal and tribal honor. There was also an element of vindictiveness in the blood feuds, which were passed down from father to son, but was understandable and even necessary in a tribal society where no central authority existed to enforce law and order. Yeah, that's a good point, right? Violent tribal and personal retaliation was the only way to keep the peace and prevent lawlessness. This is interesting. Hospitality was very important for the Greeks. If you read about the Odyssey, Odysseus, one of the main themes in that epic poem is hospitality. Really interesting. So I'm not surprised that the Arabs had the same thing going on, especially during this time period. Hospitality was and is an essential point of your character. I don't really know how to be hospitable. I mean, I work in the hospitality business, but I'm paid to be hospitable. But maybe one day I'll see how hospitable I am when I'm old and hopefully have a bunch of kids and see if I can be a good host.